CNBC TV 18, celebrating 16 years of business leadership.
All right, Nigel, thanks a lot for that. So that's a bit of nostalgia as well. That's DFM Foods. I didn't know it was listed, but thanks, Nigel, for pointing that out. Naresh Mirani now joins us to tell you what to buy or sell today for a reverse trade tomorrow. Naresh, good afternoon. Your stock ideas?
And the first stock idea is Arvind with a target price of 330 and a stop loss at 312. And second is a buy on NoSell with a target price of 66 and a stop loss at 57.
Okay, so those are some of the trading ideas. One of them is Arvind, and the price targets are on your screen, and the other one is NoSell. That's also a buy with the target prices on your screen. Thanks, Naresh, for that. Mayuresh Joshi of Angel Broking is also with us. Mayuresh, the stock of the day clearly has been ITC. It's down 7% now. Have you done any analysis? First of all, of course, it's just a GST panel recommendation, this 40% tax. But have you done any analysis on what the eventual damage would be to ITC? How much of a price hike they would have to take, and what would the volume impact be?
Afternoon, Sonia. Clearly, I think, as you rightly pointed out, they are just recommendations, and one really needs to understand the 40% sin tax that the committee is talking about. Is it over and above the central excise, which is already being paid at around 25%? That's probably point number one. Point number two, if you go by media articles and what the management had said in terms of increase in excise duty and VAT increases over the past 3.5 years, they've been quite significant at 98 and 104% respectively. So that toll has already been taking on ITC's cigarette volume degrowth, which has probably degrown in the last quarter at 15%. The point that is quite pertinent at this point of time probably is that cigarettes still constitute a major component when it comes to the EBIT for ITC, and EBIT margins of 68.8% are way higher than the other businesses. So they've done investments in their other businesses, which include FMCG, it's got the agri business, the paperboard business, the hotels business, but clearly I think the other businesses to start generating cash flows on the bottom line is going to take time. The EBIT margins have clearly been struggling, specifically for the other FMCG business excluding cigarettes, which is at a negative 0.5%. If you look at the paperboard EBIT margins as well, 10 points. They were much lower compared to 18.9 year-on-year basis. So clearly, I think if you have a kind of a scenario where the 40% probably goes through, and if it does not exclude or does not include probably the state excise and the VAT as well, you're probably talking about ITC needed or expected to take price hikes anywhere between 12 to 15%, and that probably will have some amount of telling effect in terms of how volumes will pan out. So clearly, I think at this point of time, a lot of ifs and buts, but clarity required in terms of how the stock might look. But clearly, I think it might underperform, at least from a short to medium term perspective.
Okay, Amrish, it's already underperformed quite a bit actually, right, all through the years. In fact, for 2 years now. What do you do with a stock like this?
I mean, if you're an investor, then I think you need to look for the next 2 or 3 years plus, because the other investments which they have made in the FMCG as well as the other spaces, I think that will take a while to give those returns. So that's the reason I'm saying 2 or 3 years. But as a trader, I think this stock has given enough opportunities. If you're buying between 300, 310 and exiting at about 345, 350, I think in the last 1 year, it must have given you 3 or 4 such rollovers. So I think as a trader, you can trade within this, but if you're looking at the next 1.5 to 2 years, still it's a great price to buy between 3 and 310 and just wait for 2 years.
All right, well, let's talk about some buzzing stocks. If our colleague Varinder is ready, we'll go across to him in just a bit. Yes, he is. Okay, Varinder, tell us, what are the stocks you're looking at today?
Well, you know, it's our birthday and it seems like everyone is partying. So look at some of these liquor stocks, MP Distilleries, Pincon Spirits, IFB Agro, all up anywhere between 10 to 20%. Other stocks in the small cap space which are buzzing: Sharp India up 20%, MRO Tech up 20%, Hilton Melt Forge, Gallant Metal, Kathua Udyog, new names like Arham Plastics, Associated Profile and Aluminiums, Rainbow Papers, Udaipur Cement, which is up 10-11%, Microsec Financial, Premier Explosive, Metallist Forging moving up for a long time, IVP, TVS Electronic, this stock has been just moving up, Amar Jyoti Spinning Mills, Sunstar Realty, NoSell, Goa Carbon, Spenta International, and many new names like Virat International, Unja Formulations, Parab Infra, Parental Drugs India, Bhagwati Autocast is something new which I picked up today, Gujarat Borosil, Noble Explo Chem, Edwick Labs, Sunil Agro Foods, Seven Technologies, Somi Conveyors, Vedavak System, Raj TV, most of them are up anywhere between 10 to 20%. There are some losers as well today, like Kamath Hotel, Tara Jewels, Webel SL Energy, Kiltech Drugs, Goodfrey Philip, Elpa Labs, Lux Industries and Manali Petro, which is moving down after the announcement.
All right, Varinder, thanks a lot for that. Well, just about 11 minutes left for market to close. So let's discuss some more stock ideas then with our guests. Sudarshan, a word on Asian Paints at 872. Again, a blue chip stock doing well today for a positional trader. Is there any trade which is available now?
Yeah, Asian Paints has come back from the lows, and those lows have been held for 3 different occasions. Clearly, maybe a base of some kind is now in place. So the big rally today is part of the ongoing uptrend. For position traders, you don't worry about the 3 or 4% gains. You can just go and buy it. And for traders, I think you have to pause again. This is not a market that is rewarding breakouts. But Asian Paints is a buying opportunity. Even intraday, you could look at say some small correction, small consolidation and buy.
All right, so that's Asian Paints, big mover. They're up 4.5%. Well, crude has been falling, so many of these paint stocks are big beneficiaries of that. In fact, let's hear out some more well-generating ideas that we got from our market walas, Mr. S.P. Tulsian and Prakash Diwan, and then we'll come back and wind down trade.
Donier, it's a textile company. In fact, lately, if you really see, all the textile stocks have risen quite a lot. But if you see this company, probably this has gone unnoticed. The cash EPS is seen at rupees 2.7 for first half. The cash profit is at 14 crore. Book value 15 rupees. Promoter stake is at 75%. Consistently dividend paying company. They have the Merrill Lynch also in fact holding about 7% stake. But I have seen the institutional investors, exiting, and that stock has got well absorbed in the market. So taking all this into account, I think share, ruling at 17 can move to a level of 25 rupees in 6 months or so.
This is again from the interesting basket of chemicals which have been abuzz for a long time now. First half of this year, this financial year, they've already done a revenue of about 160, which is in sync with their run rate of sorts. But what's interesting is at the PBT level, they've already clocked 22 crores against a whole full year of 32 last year. So it's kind of looking very strong going forward. It could end up with an EPS of 5 plus. So it's and even if you look at FY17, which is the next year, we're looking at about 650 on an EPS. So that's less than 11 times what you're getting for a marquee player in that business. And they're very reputed in the market. So I would put a target of about 105, 102, in the next 8-12 months.
Okay, Donier is locked on circuit and Kanoria Chemicals up 15%. So if you would have watched in the morning, you would have made a lot of money in some of these names. Amrish, a word on Just Dial. It's bounced back today quite smartly actually from the lows. What's the call here?
No, in fact, I was quite negative on this stock, I think over the last 7-8 months, and the price was about 1280, 1300. And finally, I asked people to cover at levels of about 750, 760 because the buyback was kicking off. At the same time, I just saw the beta version of, their new offering, which should be coming out in the markets in the next 3 or 4 months. And that actually really blew me off. So from that point of view, I think once that is released, possibly you could have Just Dial again moving back to those 1000 plus levels. So I think if we see a correction again to levels of below 800, I think one should be looking at buying it.
Okay, that's the call coming in on Just Dial. But Amrish, what would be your top buy calls, the beneficiaries of the lower crude prices? We were just talking about Asian Paints, but there are a whole host of others, not just in paints, there's aviation, oil marketing, etc. What would 1 or 2 of your top buy calls be?
No, but I think everything is more or less fully priced because of the oil prices coming down, because the oil prices have been now coming down for close to a year. So if you're talking of tires, I think I had seen the tire stocks about 2 or 3 years back, and I said possibly this is the time to start buying tires. But since the last 5-6 months, I've been saying it's possibly time to book out.
Sell.
Yeah, same as with aviation. Aviation, has been discovered over the last 4-5 months. Before that, people were not even looking at the aviation sector at all. But I think at these levels, it's more or less fully priced, overpriced. Something like an Indigo, I think it's too like overpriced at this point of time. Paints possibly is one space where I think one can still be invested in. I mean, stocks like Berger or Asian Paints.
Okay. Mayuresh, what's your call on Tata Steel? Looking at maybe some stake sale in some of the assets or outright sales, but as a stock with the kind of correction that we have seen in Tata Steel, is it a buy for you, or would you avoid metal names altogether?
So before I talk on Tata Steel, I think congratulations Anuj to you, Sonia, entire team at Money Control. Fabulous 16 years. We've been watching your channel for a long time, and the good work that you do is highly appreciated. Coming clearly to Tata Steel, I think the long product division that one is really talking about of the stake sale happening there, they are evaluating some options going through, and if that does go through, I think levels probably going down on a consolidated basis. However, I think one really needs to take the consolidated performance, and if one looks at the domestic operations, the expansion in Kalinganagar is a huge positive, but clearly that is going to happen in phases. There is also the inherent issue of the 1.5 MT inventory of high cost iron ore onto the books, which will have a telling effect. So clearly, I think looking at the demand supply situation, and even if you look at the inventories of around 6.5 million odd tons that the steel players are carrying in their books in the first half of FY15, I think you're going to see some amount of pressure probably even happening in terms of realization. So clearly, I think if the stake sale goes through, I think incrementally positive, but does that structurally change the story for Tata Steel and a lot of these steel players? I probably don't think so. I think you need to wait at least a couple of quarters before the cycle starts turning for the better.
Okay, Sudarshan and Ambarish, in fact, I wanted to ask you all about Sun Pharma and your views there. Sudarshan, in the month of December so far, Sun Pharma has recovered almost about 7% and in fact is now closer to the 780 mark. Do you see more recovery in store, and does it make sense to go long on this stock now?
Yes, it makes sense. There was a big gap down in Sun Pharma on the back of news, and that gap is now being filled up. That tells us that the decline is probably getting over. There is a deep correction already done and over with. So good quality stocks that have gone through deep corrections are buying opportunities. In this market, I am not sure how many day trades people can do, because there is very little volatility and a lot of choppiness. But anyone wanting to make an investing idea, even a swing trade for a few days or weeks, can go for Sun Pharma.
Ambarish, would you concur?
Yeah, absolutely, and this is what I've been saying now for a while, that I mean, especially the large pharma stocks like Lupin or a Sun Pharma, whenever there is a crack because of US FDA concerns, that's an option. But again, I would say that is not now applicable to Dr. Reddy's. I mean, it was applicable earlier, but after whatever revelations have come this time, I think Dr. Reddy is in a different pack, and I don't think one should be even buying at these levels. Okay. Although I was bullish on Dr. Reddy's earlier, I think the only two stocks to be looked at is Lupin and Sun Pharma now.
Okay, let's pull out some more stocks intraday and see the kind of moves we have seen. There's a bit of buying coming back in IT names, clearly. If you look at Tech Mahindra, HCL Tech, there's a bit of a lower level buying. Tech Mahindra in particular stands out because that I think is now at almost the high point of the day, as you can see on the screen. So that stock has looked a bit better today. HCL Tech as well, almost at high point of the day, so that stock has also looked good. On the flip side, Tata Motors is now trading lower, so that stock has lost about 0.5% in last 10 or 15 minutes of trade, so that stock also clearly stands out. Before we wind down trade, Sudarshan, a quick word on Tata Motors?
I think I would avoid this stock for now. There was a big rally. That rally is now not very sure. It's becoming choppy. On some days it goes up, sometimes it corrects, moves sideways. So perhaps to me there is no pattern that justifies any trade in it.
Okay, that's no trade zone for Tata Motors from Sudarshan. Let's do one thing, 3 minutes left, so let's just recap the trading day. It was an okay day, but you'll have to say that the opening tick was the high point for the market. That's always a negative sign for the bulls, and the Nifty in fact closed about 70-75 points off that morning high. The chief culprit, of course, was ITC. You take out ITC and the market was looking completely different, but ITC was down 6.5%, so big contribution on the way down, 30-point contribution on the way down from ITC. Apart from that, Reliance was down about 1.5%, ONGC was down 1.5%, Kane, Coal India. So some of the commodity names didn't look good. SPI was down about 1%, Maruti corrected today, down about 1%, and then you had some stray losers like Bank of Baroda, Dr. Reddy's, Tata Motors, all down between 0.25% to 0.5%. But there were some big winners as well for same reasons. Like ITC was down 6.5%, Asian Paints was up 4.5%. That was one of your stocks of the day. In fact, both ITC and Asian Paints would classify as your two stocks of the day. Asian Paints was up 4.5%. Sun Pharma, where there were 3 or 4 upgrades in the morning, so that stock looked good, 2.5% higher, nearly 3% higher on Sun Pharma. Lever was up about 2%. Tech Mahindra, as I spoke earlier, that stock looked good, so nearly 2% higher on Tech Mahindra. Lupin was up about 1.4%. Apart from that, you had names like HDFC, Tata Steel, Wipro, ACC. So some of these stocks did well. Even ICICI Bank was up about 0.5%. Extremely low in cash market volumes because there was not too much activity as far as the large caps were concerned. And even in the mid caps today, it was much more muted compared to the last few days, Sonia.
Oh yes, definitely. It was not an inspiring day at all, Anuj. Flat day for the mid caps. The market breadth split right down the middle, so you don't have any trend either. And if you look at the list of, if you look at the list of gainers, you wouldn't be awestruck. In fact, names like GMR Infra, Lanco Infra, Amtech Auto, Sri Renuka, all of these names really, saw a bit of a spike. So nothing concrete. Some of the aviation stocks continue to move higher. So Jet Airways up in the green, up about 1%. You had some of these names, like Tata Tele, etc., that did well, 3i Infotech. So a lot of penny stocks moving up, and that should make you a bit cautious on the markets. On the downside, you had names like JP Associates under pressure, Suzlon, Alok Industries, all of these names, Unitech, DLF, etc. Subex down almost about 0.7%. And it was largely a day about certain frontliner stocks like ITC. If you strip them off, it was actually a nothing sort of a day for the market. Flat with a bit of a negative bias, and the market breadth too split right down the middle. But let's continue talking about individual stocks. Sudarshan, today in the IT space there was a bit of a trade on the upside. Tech Mahindra, HCL Tech, Bureau all higher. You did mention earlier in the day that TCS is a short call that one can take, but what about the others like TechM and HCL Tech, etc.? How would you trade them?
Now trade them on the short side. They were higher today, but they were very marginally higher. And the bellwether stocks, TCS and Infosys, in some respect, have already given us very clear signs of, in case of Infosys, distribution, and in case of TCS, an ongoing bear market now. So one day doesn't make a difference.
Okay. Mayuresh, we had Anil Agarwal on the channel, and it clearly looked like from his body language that he is pretty sure of the Vedanta-Cain merger. How would you approach a stock like Cain now?
So clearly, I think in terms of pure valuations, and if you look at the cash on books of Cain compared to the price where Cain is currently ruling, clearly undervalued when it comes to the overall business. The flip side probably is the realizations in terms of crude going down, and it always discounts the average crude rate. So clearly, I think that is going to have a telling effect in terms of how revenues will pan out. But again, I think the kind of price erosion that we've seen, I think the valuations are simply too attractive. So I think it's a call that one really needs to taking into cognizance what might happen with crude over the next 3 to 4 years. But clearly, I think with a year's perspective, assuming that crude probably stays in that range of $40 to $50 a barrel, Cain might underperform. And again, I think it's been significantly noted by the management. I think the capex plans also have come down significantly, seeing the drop in realization. So again, I think the stock might underperform, even if valuations are looking extremely attractive at this point.
Okay. Valuation might be looking attractive, but the stock may underperform. Amrish, would you agree with that view? But it's been one of the biggest wealth destroyers.
That's true, but then again, unless you have the crude moving up, or if you're looking at the merged entity, both Vedanta and Cain, then I think you should be looking at the metals actually moving up. I don't think that's going to happen, at least for the next foreseeable 3 or 4 quarters. So don't really expect this stock to do anything, at least for some time. But then, again, at slightly lower levels, it makes sense if you can have a view for the next 2 to 3 years, then buy at those lower levels. Hold on for the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Because say a price of 115, 120, I don't think there is too much of a downside from there.
Okay, a couple of more names from the broader market, Sudarshan. One, of course, a blue chip name, or at least perceived to be blue chip, Motherson Sumi, and the other GMR Infra. How would you approach these names?
Well, Motherson Sumi seems to be getting out of a deep correction. I would be a buyer in Motherson Sumi, if not today, then tomorrow. We just wanted to, it is going through a mild downtrend. If once that downtrend stops and the correction ends, there's a bounce that is likely to come in. So I'm upbeat on it. The worst probably seems to be over for the stock. And I'm sorry, I missed the second one.
GMR Infra suggestion.
Oh yeah, no wonder I missed it. You know, it's probably doing all the right things. But there is very big difference between talking about a stock and asking retail traders to go and buy it, or retail investors. You do not buy GMR Infra.
Okay, on that candid note, we will wrap up with this discussion. Thanks guys for joining us. You have a good evening. We'll slip into a short break now, but when we come back, the big interview of the day, CNBC TV 18 Shireen Bhan caught up with the Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian.